match. So we'll be going ahead and watch the Dart versus Ekop. We saw Ekop earlier play against our lovely opponent. Hot form, ended up losing. In this case, it's looking like Ekop is facing off against Dart. Sorry about this. I'm sorry for restarting this. I ended up taking the exact same match as the other casters. And I don't want to overlap if people want to watch two different matches at once in a multi-stream. It's up to them. So it looks like Hermelion banned for Dart and Corona's banned for Ekop. Dart playing a very aggressive Rage deck. So Rage is the color of anger and hatred. It's red. It's the mono red aggro that you can think of in Magic the Gathering. It exists in this game as well. And God knows how aggressive it is. So Gibo and Roni. Actually, I wonder if it's pronounced Gibo, but I'll say Gibo. So Gibo and Roni, you pay 3 mana and you get 2/2/1s on the board. Very solid. Pretty sick, pretty sick. So this opener is for Dart. The only thing missing may be a 1-drop. And I imagine he got some. Yes, he probably did at that. Yeah, two of his cards are already dead. So apparently he had a decent opener. At the very least, a decent one. I think that was a very scary thing for Ekop to look at. I want to see what else Ekop is able to do here, because that opener from Dart is excessively aggressive. Dart has the edge, aggression-wise, usually. There's a lot of really powerful direct damage burn. And unlike the Entangle, Dart's ability is even better, given that it actually lets you simply prevent someone from blocking, instead of giving simply less speed to it. So, as we can see here, Ekop is able to play Tombs of the Damned. Probably better off playing this ASAP. The only issue is the zombies that spawn only have 1 speed, so they're not able to block anything coming from Dart. So there's a good chance we see Infected Survivor instead. And then a possible hero power use on the 2/1 to get a good trade. I would not be too surprised if we saw either Rotting Remains or Infected Survivor. I would go for Infected Survivor. Very solid card to have here. Okay, looks like Ekop is going to choose to let Dart pick his play. And that is very ballsy. Very ballsy. So we have the Zombie Legionnaire going face, and Dart will of course let it go through. There's no reason for him to not do so. So Ekop will leave the Rotting Remains as a defender. When this takes damage, or when this engages in combat at all, it takes a weakness emblem at the end of the turn. Which has been, like, it's been seen in interesting decks. You see, like, Dominion zombie decks using this with the Revenant. Very powerful play, and it looks like Dart is killing the blocker immediately, which is very good. He understands that Ekop wanted to keep this as a tool for blocking, but Dart will not let him. Instead, Dart will simply kill it with a spell, dealing 3 damage to it and 1 to everything else on the same line, allowing him as well to use Fia to kill to finish off a zombie with 1 health remaining. So this zombie will fall down. Interesting decision there for Dart to make the trades. Okay. It's interesting. I think he realizes that if he doesn't make the trade, what Ekop will do is lower the speed of Fia next turn with the hero power, and then attack her with a zombie, being that it will be going down to 1 speed. So Ekop making the safe plays. Dart making the safe plays, and you very often tend to see a lot of herp derp Rage Rush. They can basically just not think too much and, shut down their brain and get, work done. In this case, we see the Dart is playing a more cautious Rage play. I like it a lot. I think it's very fitting. Now again, the hero power for Ekop still available, and the Soul Prison as well, available whenever he goes up to the 3rd shrine. The Succubus as well is going to put him farther and farther away from Dart's burn. This is a weird spot for Dart. And these creatures are all threatening because, of course, that hero power makes it so they trade with everything. One of the best cards you could pick up is a way to increase the attack of Fia here. Increasing her attack means that she can attack into anything and kill it. right away. Say Fia were to attack with ranged. Goodness, that doesn't feel good. He may have to force the infected survivor not to be able to block, and then use the 2-1 to attack the rotting remains to make sure it dies. But if he doesn't prevent this from blocking, then he'll simply end up being... there we go. So he does prevent the infected survivor from blocking. With 3 speed, it could block anything it wanted. And in this spot, a good trade again made by Dart. But as we spoke of, the Entangle from Ekop is going to put him in a bit of a weird spot, to say the least. There's a chance that Dart decides to sacrifice Fia to deal damage directly to Ekop, but that is also playing into Ekop's game plan, which is force Dart to make awful trades or sacrifices for the sake of damage. Yeah, Ekop's in a commanding lead right now. It looked like Dart was his favored. Yeah, he's forced to make that sacrifice. It is a bad one, but not many choices left. Not many choices left. Alright, so there is a perfect board clear here for Ekop if he wants to take it. You use the Corruption Shrine, reduce the speed of one of these guys. And he does so quite well indeed, and this is flawless. Flawless execution there by Ekop. So this will kill this, or if a block occurs, it will kill the 1-2 with higher speed, and then the hero power will be used, Soul Prison, to force Dart to sacrifice the Lizard Barbarian, and at that point, it's just a matter of Dart. Dart is going to have to get some sickeningly good draws. We're talking dragons, we're talking... we're talking god draws at this stage. There's also a good option for Ekop to simply replace Tombs of the Damned to get himself an additional zombie. It's not awful, just to get an additional body on the board to race faster. Given that you can probably snipe something better later, but I would be tempted to use Soul Prison here anyway. I mean, if you play it now, then in 2 turns, in 3 turns it'll be available to kill a dragon anyway. So it's very safe to use it now rather than later if you're hoping to snipe a dragon. Dragon being one of the biggest creatures in Rage. Putting Fia in the backline neuters it. So the backline does not really affect her because she's got Swift, obviously, as you might have seen. She can attack as soon as she comes back to the front line. Dart, in a dire spot, is going to hope that Ekop is not holding Succubi or Word of Pains even. Words of Pain being a very good way to cycle. And Word of Fire for Dart. This card right here is absolutely nuts. You gain 1 rage level for as long as you control Burning Rage. Insane card, but better yet, whenever you play a rage spell, you draw a card, so you can cycle non-stop. However, it does deal damage to you every single turn, so there's a price to pay for power, and that is 1 health per turn. And when you're racing up against a zombie deck, the last thing you want to do is damage yourself. But it speeds up the playing of dragons, and I would actually not be too surprised if a dragon came out for Dart here, or in the next few turns, or just a bunch of spells. Fire Blast would be somewhat relevant. Word of Fire will kill the Succubus, great play there, but Ekop has a second one, gonna make that health gap even bigger, and there's a chance that lethal is right there for Ekop next turn. If Dart uses Dragon Fire... we saw the Dragon Fire pop up for no reason I can fathom, since it wasn't actually played. I guess Dart showed it by targeting, or trying to target something. Yeah, I mean, Dart has to use it to face if he wants to win, but he can't do so. So he's going to use Fire Blast on a creature, draw himself a card. Not a bad play at all, but look at that. We on the board right now, we're looking at 4 damage next turn. And the Succubus coming out is going to be 7. So, almost a lethal there for Ekop. Almost a lethal. He's got the Succubus available. This is a no-brainer. I mean, if he picks up Noxious Fumes, I think he won right away. Haunted Cemetery is an amazing card to pick up here as well. Lets you get some free zombies, because why not? Lots of good stuff. Liking this. So now my big question is there a way for Dart to not die. I'm hard pressed to find one. I am hard pressed to find one. I mean, the succubus is creating that health gap again and again and again, making it so much harder for rage to catch up. Making it so much harder for rage to get. Dart has no answer to this. I can't even think of one. Is there such a thing as an answer? Like, he doesn't play any healing, so even under the assumption that he somehow had the ability to clear the board, he still dies to the other succubus from Ekop. Pretty much over at this point, I would assume. And in fact, Ekop takes it. Ekop's off to a commanding start here. He's got himself a 2-0, and now, with the first game of the series versus Dart, also gets another win, and if he wins the next one, that's going to be a 4-0 start for Ekop, and he is playing what is arguably one of the strongest decks in the game. So if I were you, I would get pretty excited. Now, we haven't seen this deck from Ekop, so I will shift back to his perspective, and then I promise you we will look at another player's perspective next game. But this time around, I think it's really cool that we get to see the last deck from Ekop, the Hermelian deck, which is usually getting banned. It's an elf deck, an aggressive elf deck, and it uses Hermelian's ability, which lets you kind of unexhaust all your characters and let them attack again. So it's basically letting you get a second wave of attacks. Very powerful thing. However, Fire Blast in Dart's deck, one of the strongest cards against this deck, which is probably why Dart didn't feel too threatened by Hermelian. Understandably. So Ekop is going to be kind of starved. Okay, never mind. I was going to say starved for creatures with this opening. He picks up the Summoner Druid. Amazing card. Lets you spend some of its energy, which is essentially another stats that... This is like a creature with mana, right? It's got a certain amount of charges, and you can use those charges to do stuff. So 1 energy will make it so the second creature card you play this turn will cost you less. And in many spots, I suspect this is going to be played next turn, right? Like, this is a very strong effect. I would have almost liked to... Yeah, I like this a lot. So what happened here is Ekop opted to use the ability right away and sacrifice his Spark of Initiative, also known as Coin in Hearthstone, to summon the Ambushing Sharpshooter for only 1 mana. And because it is swift, it gets to attack immediately, and because it is ranged, it does not take retaliation damage, so the Goblin did not kill it back. And that means that right now Dart has to deal with this as soon as he can, or barring that, fine. This is great. He picks up a Word of Fire, dealing 1 damage for each rage level. That is 2 damage dealt to this guy, and it lets him cycle as well. One of the things to keep in mind is that this poor little lizard barbarian cannot attack the ambushing sharpshooter without dying, and it cannot attack face without then dying to the sharpshooter. So I think what Dart will do here is play it very cautiously and try to set up a really good Fire Blast against Ekop. Dart is able to keep the Fire Blast for the most opportune time, and this is going to be a devastating blow if there is one. Path to Transcend this, very good card. You pay 2 mana, and you get yourself the ability to return a card to your hand at the end of each turn. And then eventually you pay 1 mana and you bring them all back into play. And if they're swift, incidentally, they get to attack again. They get to attack immediately. That is very powerful. So, Ambushing Sharpshooter gets buffed by the Cavalry Field Captain. Gives it +1 attack, +1 HP, +1 speed. So, for 1 turn only, of course. This guy will then go back to 1 health, and that means that if Dart has Fire Blast, this is gonna feel bad for Ekop. Losing his entire board to 1 spell. Ugh, it's gonna suck. That is gonna suck. So Ekop is probably considering moving back a creature or 2, because he knows that if Fire Blast hits, there we go. If Fire Blast hits, he loses everything. He can't afford it. It is not something you can afford to. It's not a risk you can take. It's not a risk you can take. I would still Fire Blast if I'm Dart. This is still a decent Fire Blast. Actually, this is a lot better. Puts down pressure that the opponent has to answer. And it's just funny, really, to think about the fact that despite the threat of Fire Blast, See, look at this. Dart is just, like, he knows he's going to lose all his board if he lets it sit there. Because as long as Ekop has a range character, he can just do whatever he wants. He can just do whatever he wants. So Ekop picks up another mana. This is a great card. It's a 0/3 that lets you play the cards from the top of your deck, if they're elves, as though they were in your hand. And look at this. Each elf that is played buffing this guy by +1/+1 for a turn. And at the moment, 2 elves were played. And this is insane. This is insanely powerful. Look at this amount of damage. We're looking at 5 damage going in right now for Dart. He's going to have to answer this somehow, although I can't figure out why. He's going to figure out how he's going to need Fire Blast. He cannot even afford not having Fire Blast in this spot. He is otherwise going to just go down to Tireless March from Ekop's Hermelian ability. This is getting really dangerous for Dart. But obviously not unmanageable. 1 Fire Blast is all it takes. That is all it takes. Dart may, I mean, Ekop is probably going to opt, yes, I was going to say to move back the Elf Scout, forcing the Fire Blast to either be used on the back line ineffectively, or put it on the front line where it's going to hit even less targets, giving Ekop some time to respond. But Dart with the Fire Blast would still clean up these 2 guys, put the 3 characters at the front, giving him the initiative afterwards when his next turn comes around. And he's got 4 mana to open Rage, and that is giving him a ton of aggressive options. I love the way Dart is playing this. I'm loving this. And Flameborn Incarnate having a really interesting ability. So this is a 2-mana card that has attack and health equal to the opponent's level, which means if the opponent is trying to stack, you know, let's say 2, 3, 4, this guy keeps growing as you go, and assuming the opponent does not answer it, it just keeps being bigger and bigger. Now this is the point where Ekop is just dealing way too much damage to the opponent. I mean, this is really scary. Ambush Strike can be used on the ambushing sharpshooter, so that is 4 damage to face, 4 or 5 that can be dealt. There's an elf right here, so that could buff this guy. So if you pay 2 mana, you pay... Goodness gracious. So for 2 mana and 3 here, he can deal 10 damage right now. There can be 10 damage dealt to Dart right away. But, and this is a really big and important but, it's an ominous one, it's not lethal. It is not lethal. So playing that, like taking that line of play is a risky one. What I would like to see here is Path to Transcendence being played with the ambushing sharpshooter at the end of the turn. You just return it back to your hand to keep it safe. And then, because it is swift, when it comes back, you still get a really good turn. Yep, this is a very solid play here by Ekop. Probably going to hold on to that Ambush Strike to use with the Tireless March, so that it will double dip in the redeployment ability. And no doubt Ekop will bring back the Ambushing Sharpshooter to his hand to replay it at will whenever Transcendence dies. When he sacrifices the Path, the Ambushing Sharpshooter is going to come back to the board with a Might Emblem. And then it'll basically be just an auto win, because it becomes a 3-2, you buff it by 1, which means it becomes a 4-3, and then you just Tireless March with only 1 creature and you still win. So, Dart is going to have to find the Artifact Removal Goblin. I mean the spell removing card in red, which is pretty much impossible. At this rate, Dart is looking gorgeous. And what's great about this is that you can just move everything back to the front and unexhaust them. If you want. This is a very solid turn by Ekop. Alright, this is the moment of truth for Dart. Does he or does he not have what it takes to win? Is this hand good enough? Oh, that is true, actually. Never mind, I lied. It's gonna be a 5-minute delay, but you guys are talking about it right now in the chat. It's, apparently the Path to Transcendence actually exhausts the creature, but it doesn't matter because Ekop just readies them all. Like, it doesn't apply. Because killing Path of Transcendence on the opponent's end of the turn basically means that you bring it back right away, and then when your turn starts, it's ready to attack. Path of Transcendence exhausts your creatures only when you do it on your turn. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Right now, from what I'm looking, I think the game is just over because I see Amber Strike being usable on Cavalry Field Captain, attacking for 4, such that even if there's a Fireball for Dart trying to kill it, it'll still die. So Ekop gets to attack with a Cavalry Field Captain. And that is game. With 3 mana open, he can ready everything. And Dart concede. Ekop 4-0. What a crazy opening for Ekop. What a crazy opening.